So our final segment for today, we're going to be talking about the uh, the Facebook whistleblower
Frances Haugen is her name.
and everything that's been uncovered over the past month. So this spiked in popularity recently because of the 60 Minutes interview that came out, where they talked pretty in depth about the stuff that she uncovered during her time in Facebook, and I believe she worked there for about 2 years up until May.
Yeah, she worked, so she was brought on in 2019, and she specifically requested that she wanted to work in civic integrity.
Yeah,
That was specifically where she wanted to work, and that was her condition upon being recruited by Facebook.
because she wanted to fight misinformation from the beginning.
Yes, because at that point, she had already lost a friend to conspiracism.
Yeah. So the big thing that was uncovered is like Facebook does their own internal research to both of their social media sites, being Facebook and Instagram,
Mhm.
and they don't do anything about it. Is the big thing that was uncovered, and nobody knew about this up until Francis leaked it all, and we learned a lot from what was uncovered. For example, like the it's slipping my mind here. The fact that um,
The politicians?
oh, right. The fact that certain like high level accounts like celebrities, politicians, and stuff like that
Mhm.
get clearanced by their review board about what they say because they've got a system where they monitor certain controversial topics and misinformation, and that was really important for not only COVID but the 2020 election as a whole because like people were spreading misinformation on how to vote, and it's obviously something that should not be done because that hinders someone's right to vote.
Yeah. So, other things we learned was one about the teenage girls that have been negatively affected by Instagram influencers and the algorithm that Instagram pushes to push these influencers and their very, very, very fake bodies that are usually been modified by filters, modified by some type of supplements that they take that are not accessible to the common person, and how it really pushes these images of these very beautiful people and how it really degrades the self-esteem of teenage girls, which they cited in the article. But I would also say teenage boys as well, as there are a whole bunch of like male influencers that have like very jacked muscular bodies or very toned sleek bodies that are definitely very attractive but not realistically attainable or as attainable as the picture looks, because once again they are heavily altered pictures, and usually these influencers and celebrities use like supplements that are probably not available to the general population.
Yeah. In fact, even in their own internal research, Facebook uncovered that on Instagram they contributed to a lot of teen suicides and eating disorders.
Yeah, which I'm not surprised about. This has actually been something that has been somewhat common knowledge in a lot of academic spaces, that social media is harming teenagers and their self-image due to just the very manufactured nature of the platforms that they're on, and how they allow someone to alter the way that they present themselves to the rest of the world. I mean, this was something that happened with Snapchat actually, where some of the Snapchat filters, they altered you subtly enough that you looked different than how you normally looked, but you still looked same enough that people recognized you. Like it would improve, like, it would improve like your nose a little bit.
Maybe like
Or,
alter your cheek structure a bit.
yeah. And some people got used to just looking how they look on the filter, that when they look at their regular self, they see something or someone that just isn't attractive, which isn't true at all. I mean, you're fine the way that you are in terms of your looks, and you don't need these filters to really make you look different than how you are. Because I mean, at the end of the day, when a person sees you in person, it's gonna be yourself. And if someone dates you or like marries you or whatever, they're dating and marrying the person that they're seeing in person, not the one that they're seeing on Instagram.
Right, right.
But that just also goes to show how insidious this is that this is something that is very easy to know and fix, and they're not doing anything about it.
Honestly, it's really disgusting that they know what's going on behind the scenes. Like, for example, for the 2020 election, they pretty much like amplified their filter for the 2020 election for when handling stuff like misinformation. And then as soon as the election was over,
They turned it off.
they returned it back to normal.
Yeah.
And just and internally disgusted by the fact that they are contributing so much to the spread of conspiracism and hatred, and they know it.
And let's just talk about this even more for a bit. This insidiousness is not just, oh, it's misinformation. Some people could pass off as, oh, no one's getting hurt or anything. Wrong. There are real world deaths attributed to this. For example, there is an ongoing genocide of the Muslim population within Myanmar. Myanmar has a very high Buddhist population, and there's a current genocide going on of the Muslim population. That genocide has been perpetuated extensively through Facebook and WhatsApp.
Yeah, what's scary is that it's not even happening alone in the US. Like in places like Myanmar, it's frightening.
Yeah, people are dying. People are dying due to this misinformation that's being spread by Facebook and its affiliated apps.
And in the US, like even people contributed to it and contributed to spreading the potential of having like the riots during January 6th, and obviously people got killed because of it. I mean, yeah, it not only happened on Facebook, it happened on places like, what was the other one that got shut down?
Parler and Gab.
And it's
But
it's something they could easily stop, and they have the ability to stop it, and they know what's going on their website. And what's the reason why they're not doing any of this? It's because in the research, it was shown that the angrier the people are, the more engaged they are with the platform.
And if they're more engaged, that means there's more ads, and that means more money.
And that's what's motivating their actions. Is
With-
that they're not motivated by upholding democracy or making sure that conspiracism doesn't spread. It's the fact that they're motivated by their ads.
Yeah. And one thing that is kind of not known, but being a Facebook filter, like content filter, like manager, like the actual people that do it, is a very traumatizing experience. Like, there's so much gore and violence and very inappropriate videos. And by inappropriate, I mean very predatory and disgusting videos that get shared all across Facebook that content filters see and they try to get rid of, but there's so much they can't get rid of it all. Like, I mean, when you remember when Pornhub had gone through its whole revamp due to the existence of child pornography on the platform, right?
Yeah, I believe that they eliminated like 11 examples there.
Yeah, it was like 11. There's probably more that they got because, let's be honest here, Pornhub, there's no verification to uploading it to it, and so it's entirely possible there was more. But in proportion, Facebook has like what, 10,000% more on their platform?
It was at least 6 digits, if I recall.
Yeah, there is so much more on Facebook that doesn't get taken down, which is known. This is known to us. This is known to the public. I can only imagine what the numbers really are due to the internals that they have. There's probably some numbers that Frances Haugen didn't obtain that probably show other horrifying statistics about what Facebook is hiding on their platform and what they're allowing to flourish because they'll make money. Like, I mean, another thing is that in Europe, there are a lot of European politicians that privately complain to Facebook about how the proliferation of conspiracism on the platform has caused them to adopt more far-right and conspiratorial policy positions than they normally would be comfortable with. And I mean, if it's happening in Europe, it's happening here. It's happening everywhere because Facebook is near universal. There are 2 billion people that use Facebook, according to their analytics. That accounts for about 1/4 of the world's population. 1/4 of the world's population is on Facebook, according to their analytics. That means that 1/4 of the population has the potential to be exposed to horrifying amounts of misinformation that are literally destroying countries and causing genocides.
Yeah.
That is something that is absolutely horrifying to really confront, that the social media app Facebook that you use to say happy birthday and keep in contact with your friends and family from years past is also contributing to some of the worst atrocities that we're seeing. I mean, what was it? There was drug cartels in Mexico that were recruiting and training hitmen through Facebook.
Yeah.
And I mean, drug cartels are not to be messed with. They're dangerous organizations. And their hitmen are notorious for being brutally efficient and very, very capable of causing massive harm to their targets and their targets' loved ones.
And Facebook did none of it and nothing about it. And all in all, just everything that was uncovered thanks to Frances Haugen, prompts to her. She is incredibly brave coming out against this multi-billion-dollar social media corporation.
I mean, we're lucky that the current standards within the SEC allows for her to be protected for leaking those documents, as she leaked them to the SEC. So it allows her to be safe, and thank God for that. But really props to her, because she honestly is doing a great service to not just us as Americans, but to the world, because this information affects everyone across the planet.
And if you guys do want to learn about this, we'd highly recommend you look at the Facebook files on Wall Street Journal, because that's where we learned a lot of what we talked about today.
Yeah, that's where the story initially broke, and you can listen to it. You don't actually have to read it. You can listen to it in audio form. I would also recommend watching the 60 Minutes interview, as that is also really enlightening as well.
Right. Those two primary sources were really helpful in organizing our information for this segment. And
another good source to watch is John Oliver's most recent segment about Facebook misinformation that's going on, because he focused specifically on the foreign misinformation that's happening in foreign countries, because unlike in America, Facebook is synonymous with the internet in a lot of different countries, because Facebook makes deals with internet service providers in these countries that Facebook basically becomes the default. It comes pre-downloaded on a lot of phones. Like when people want to go on Facebook, when people want to go on the internet, they just go on Facebook. WhatsApp is also really popular, which is a Facebook affiliated app. And a lot of people use WhatsApp as their main texting app, because texting through normal messaging services in other countries is extremely expensive. Meanwhile, WhatsApp is free. And not only is it free, you get to communicate with people around the world, and you get to communicate with an innumerable amount of friends and families. WhatsApp group chats are massive. They are really massive. Same with Facebook Messenger group chats. They're absolutely massive. And so they allow you to connect with a whole bunch of people, which is great. It's great for people in foreign countries because it allows them to connect with family abroad. It allows them to properly advertise businesses. It allows them a cheap and what it's supposed to be, a very cheap and fun way to explore the internet when you don't have the proper resources due to it being expensive in other arenas. Problem being, though, is that not only does Facebook proliferate a lot of misinformation, it's more so for foreign countries. For example, there's a lot of vaccine fact checking that's being done here in America. That same fact checking is not applied to countries like Vietnam, where the fact checkers that are supposed to be doing their jobs on Facebook don't focus on it because it's not spoken in English, which is terrible, because, like I said, 2 billion people have access to Facebook. That's 1/4 of the world's population. Most people in the world don't speak English as their first language. So having misinformation proliferate because your fact checkers don't care for non-English speaking countries is terrible. That's probably why things like the genocide going on in Myanmar that's happening is going so like happening so much across Facebook because the fact checkers they don't speak the language that's spoken there. I don't know exactly the official language of Myanmar. I'll look it up, but it's not a primarily English speaking country from what I know. So I can
Yeah.
imagine the fact checkers do not care about it as much, which is terrible.
Overall, one thing I want to wrap up this topic with is that considering that Facebook is mostly popular with older generations and the fact that
Burmese is the official language of
okay,
the Burmese is the official language of Myanmar, which makes sense because prior to being called Myanmar, it was called Burma.
okay, but to continue what I was saying,
Yeah.
like Facebook is much more popular with older generations, and younger generations tend to stay away from Facebook. Do you think that with most people on the left learning about this, do you think Facebook can rectify its image to younger generations? Because let's face the fact that they want younger generations to come onto Facebook because they are afraid of missing out on a whole generation of people to sign up, and that's a whole generation of not making ads. Do you think that their image is repairable to those younger generations?
My answer is simply yeah, because when you think about it, Facebook is nearly a necessity for a lot of people. I know that when I was in college, my dorm, like the floor for my dorm, had a Facebook group, and that was the only way you would know about any meetings that your RA or peer mentor wanted to host was through the Facebook group. So you had to get a Facebook. I mean, not just that, but dating apps. Apps like Tinder require you to have a Facebook. So if you want to use dating apps, you have to use Tinder. Or, I mean, even if you don't use Facebook, there's Instagram. Instagram is a massively popular app. Or, like I said, in foreign countries outside of America, Facebook is just the cheaper option than trying to get regular internet.
That is fair.
Facebook and
Because
WhatsApp. So,
for every person on the young side that's not using Facebook, most of them probably do have an Instagram.
yeah, but the thing is that I don't think the younger generation is at any risk of using it less. In fact, I think they use it more because the younger generation is more tech literate. I think Facebook, I mean, it's a near necessity for people to really keep up with friends that aren't in their,
Nearby circle.
nearby social circles. So to that, I say, I don't think they really are worrying about younger people as they kind of got them by the balls. I mean, Facebook is like necessary. I mean, we use Facebook for this show. To promote the show, we use Facebook and we use Instagram. And we do that because it's a good way to promote the show, but that also just shows how near universal Facebook is. I mean, there are small businesses in foreign countries and in America that rely on Facebook to advertise, as that's probably one of the only ways for them to actually get proper like business and advertising for free or for a low cost. So I don't think Facebook really is in any worry of losing users.
Yeah. Huh. That is pretty interesting because mostly I come from the perspective like whenever people talk about Facebook, they talk about all the hate and conspiracism that's spread on that website. So, and I'm not one who uses Facebook in my personal life, but it is pretty accurate that a lot of people it's required in personal life.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I didn't have a Facebook until I went to college. And even though I don't use Facebook like too much, I just share memes and I use it for the podcast. The main reason I even have a Facebook is because it makes using dating apps easier. Because you can just connect your Facebook to dating apps, or hell, not just dating apps. You connect your Facebook to Spotify. You can connect your Facebook to Nintendo to make friends over a Nintendo Switch online. Like, just having a Facebook just makes things easier. Like, I mean, I was able to friend a lot of my friends for the Switch through just Facebook because we're friends on Facebook. So I could just go through connecting my Facebook to Nintendo Switch Online and my friends are there. Didn't have to go through the tedious journey of asking them individually, texting them, trying to get their friend code ID. We're friends on Facebook, thus I can be friends with them on Nintendo Switch. And then we get to play Smash or Mario Kart or whatever together. But that just shows you just how universal Facebook is. How in something as wanting to play Mario Kart with your friends on Nintendo Switch Online involves Facebook. That's how universal it is. And that's why I say that they are really in no position to be worried about younger people not using it because it's so ingrained in technological infrastructure. The main thing that they're really worried about is what governments can do. As at the end of the day, Facebook has to really work within the confines of the laws of the countries that it operates in.
And give 20 to 30 years, we could see, because I don't see regulation coming to Facebook anytime in the near future, but as society progresses, we could definitely see like laws limiting misinformation, or not limiting misinformation, but requiring like Facebook to have a stronger enforcement of misinformation when it comes to elections.
Yeah, I mean, for as much of a hellhole Twitter is far better at stopping misinformation from spreading.
Because we all saw the headlines like that conservatives were freaking out about uh, people like getting censored for their ideas, even though Twitter just put up little headlines saying, "Hey, this may be misinfo."
Yeah. But I mean, Twitter has actually gone farther than that. Twitter is known for having alt-right bandwaves. Kind of similar to how Reddit occasionally will have alt-right bandwaves of alt-right subreddits. Twitter does the same with accounts. Facebook doesn't do the same thing.
Right.
So not only is it insidious in the fact that Facebook knows these things and is not doing anything about it, it's that the things that we want them to do are achievable because there are other social media platforms that are able to do it better than Facebook. Like Reddit and Twitter have a way better filtering process. I mean, you saw how quickly Twitter was to, censor Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene and whatever for all their misinformation. It took the January 6th, a literal insurrection in the Capitol building, for Facebook to do something about Donald Trump.
Right.
And even then, that was only for what? A day? Before they had to come out with a real decision?
Yeah, they came out with their decision after a day, and then a few months later they revisited it and even said, "Yeah, but we're not letting it back on."
Yeah. And I think that's solely because they know that the pushback for letting him back on would probably be way too much for them.
Right. All in all, just everything that we've learned through Frances, I forgot her name,
Frances
Frances
Haugen.
Haugen. Everything we've learned from her definitely helps us understand what's going on in the background of Facebook, and we definitely need to understand everything that concerns misinformation and just what they're not doing.
One thing that I also saw was also about how what they're doing is probably even illegal, depending on what they divulge to their shareholders, as it's illegal to withhold this type of information from shareholders.
Right, like you can't lie to them, and even important pieces of info, it's important even like it's illegal to even just hide stuff. Like
Yeah,
you can't lie or hide anything.
like it's not even like you can lie by omission or just say like, "Oh, it never came up, so I didn't say it." No, that's illegal. So potentially Facebook is breaking laws, but I highly doubt we're going to see any criminal action taken against Mark Zuckerberg or Facebook as a corporation. But that is another thing that's happening that she exposed, that not only is this stuff immoral, it's disgusting, it's illegal. So it's morally and legally repugnant. Any more thoughts that you have about Facebook and or social media in regards to how this misinformation has been spreading?
All in all, this just makes me even less um, likely to just consider Facebook as what I use, because I use it very little at this point, but No, I just don't even want to touch it.
Yeah, I mean, I only use Facebook to like say happy birthday, send memes, and do work for the podcast. But outside of that, I don't really use Facebook proper. Hell, I haven't even used Instagram that much, unless it's for the podcast, really. And
Yeah.
WhatsApp, I mean, the last time I used WhatsApp, seriously, I was like in high school when I was connecting with international friends that I met on cruises. But like, yeah.
Yeah.
But I know my experience is not the universal experience, and Facebook is a huge part of many people's lives. And so it needs to be taken seriously by everyone.
All in all, pretty much wraps up our opinions on the Facebook whistleblower.
Yeah.
All in all, I think we had a pretty good show today.